I think I have too much coffee in my body.
What else is new?
Take some more.
If you're Russ, there is no such thing.
Yeah,
So
I was going to say, is that possible? That's like saying you have too much whiskey in your body. That is just not possible.
you know he's never been hungover. How fucked is that?
What?
I woke up hungover this morning. I'm like, are you kidding?
Allie, are you okay?
I'm just thinking about the many times I went to work in the music business, hungover,
God.
and like staying out till 4 in the morning and then being at work at 10, maybe still a little drunk and making it through the day and having a disco nap and doing it all over again.
Hi, welcome to another episode of the Indie Music Network podcast. See, I got music right. Hi, welcome to the... I should shut up and just do it straight. Hi, welcome to another episode of the Indie Music Podcast presented by Not Dead Yet Media.
Indie Music Network podcast.
I just said that.
You just got it. No, you
I just
didn't.
said it.
You said Indie Music Podcast after you already got it right.
You know, it's too long of a name.
Every time. You made up the name.
Well, because I couldn't get indie without music. That's why. So it stuck with me. It was the Indie Network.
Actually, you know what? You already got it. Just keep going. Just keep going.
Welcome to another episode of the Indie Music Network podcast presented by Not Dead Yet Media. This is where we talk about how artists could break through the noise and gain some visibility in the music industry and actually build a career. I'm Russ Rieger. A music executive, a manager, and entrepreneur, and I'm joined by my team and really good friends, Heather and Rebecca. Hi, guys.
Hey, Russ. Heather, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Anybody understand cues?
I would love to. I'm Heather DeArmas. I am a manager. I'm an entrepreneur. I am the one who silences Russ slamming his mug down every second he drinks coffee in this podcast, and I'm so happy to be here.
And I'm Rebecca Carroll. I call myself a social entrepreneur because I've started 2 companies on my own, but I like building companies together with people. So we had such a good time talking with our guests in a first episode. We asked them to come back for part 2, and God bless them, they were willing to say yes. Maybe they're faking it, but
I think they're regretting it.
Thanks for
right
having
now.
pity on us. So let me introduce.
I actually got postcards. I got postcards and mail of people writing in saying they had such a great. It was just an overwhelming support of people saying this is fantastic. I have no idea.
Are you serious? Really?
No, because
Yes,
why would I fucking get a postcard? You'd get an email or Instagram or something on socials.
Sometimes it's just really nice to get paper mail, like a card.
I send cards to people all the time.
Or a postcard, don't you think?
Let me tell you something. Even in the music business, for indie artists, anything you get I mean, no one can understand what I wrote. I should, if I were talented, I could be a doctor. The only skill I have as a doctor is their handwriting. Everything else I suck at. But the handwritten note, you want to stand out. That's like a beautiful thing.
I found one from Emmylou Harris the other week.
You did?
Yeah, I was like, oh, wow. When I wanted her to run for president. Yeah.
This was after Jella Biafra ran for mayor.
Perhaps.
You wanted her to run for president?
She was inspired by Jello. Let me reintroduce Kim Biggs and Alli Truch to our audience. For more than 20 years, these sisters have used their creative talents to capture that hard-to-define magic that makes a brand actually mean something and turning it into swoon-worthy, award-winning creative. They're driven by a shared love of art and design and the powerful role both play in shaping pop culture. But if you trace it all back, the story starts with music. Welcome, Kim and Alli. Thank you for joining us again.
Thank you for having us.
Hey.
Isn't it sisters are doing it by themselves or sisters are doing it for themselves?
Exactly.
Something like that.
It's always got to be a lyric. Otherwise, why are we here?
Annie Lennox. Eurythmics.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's right.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Use that. I think that'll go really well. You should use that.
I think we should.
Maybe we should.
And I'm waiting, and I'll give you my address for the handwritten note.
All right.
Well, or for Annie and her people to write to you asking for royalties.
So there was one thing I wanted to talk about last time that we didn't get into because it's something big on us in the indie world that we're creating initiatives and platforms because the everything comes from indie, but they're always under leveraged. Like it's like mom and pops against corporate, right? They're either bought out or they run out. It's that. So we're trying to create this indie coalition and move forward in different things to work together. But you've experienced two things of working in all sections of music with rock. But one of the things I keep looking at is hip hop. The culture of hip hop was such a purposeful coalition that I guess happened organically because they knew what was at stake, or they were always under leverage. And whether it was the mixtapes or someone jumping on another record or doing, everyone worked together to kind of bring everybody up, to have all boats rise. So they made a lot of freaking boats and they all worked on the same boats. Where indie, everybody's their own silo, their own mom and pop thing. And I don't know how you experience that in the art world, but I think you could give a lot of lessons in how that culture, which was a global impact, could actually help indie artists see what they keep missing. And I wanted to talk to you about that last time, but we didn't get to it.
I think before you talk about anything in hip hop, you have to look at racism because people are, we're all equal in my eyes, at least. I wish the rest of the world was the same, but they're dealing with a whole other layer that we'll never understand. And I think that a lot of hip hop starts in the street and it starts in the community. And if you can get your own community hot on the music or hot on what's going on in it, then you've got a winner and they'll do whatever it takes to become successful.
Having been broke more than once, there's a different attitude that you have about, I'm not going back there and be able to
Yeah.
go. But you're right. Well, there's multiple layers of oppression going on, and
Well, we could go back to Old Dirty Bastard. When the Welfare Card album came out, he was on welfare. He had 12 kids, I believe, at the time, and he was really on welfare. And as soon as he started blowing up more, not just with Wu-Tang, but with his solo album, all of a sudden, everybody started freaking out. He started this movement because they were like, how can you be famous and the celebrity and doing all these shows and stuff, and then you're on welfare?
So was there any of that brought to you when you were kind of working on the art? Was there a sensibility either of community that you saw happening, or was it I need it to look like this because this is going to work on merch, or this is going to do? Was there that kind of ecosystem wholeness thing that again a lot of indie artists don't.
I think for hip hop, especially for me, it was more about connecting with the artists and bringing their vision to life. It wasn't about who's black or who's white. It was really just about like starting to understand the artist, understand the music, understand their vision, and bring their album to life as best as you possibly could. It's their baby, and you've got to make it look like amazing. And also a whole movement was starting to happen. And I really feel like if I had known what it would have become, knowing what I know now, then I would have been like completely freaking out the whole time because most of these people now are legends.
Yeah.
Are
Mm-hmm.
living legends or legends. And I'm like, I can't believe I worked with that person. I can't
Yeah.
believe I did this. I can't believe, like, it's just, I'm in awe of them.
Well, you were at the cusp of it all happening. It was
Yes,
all while
yes.
you were doing it, it was exploding. It was
Yes, but
just
it's
exponential.
shocking to me that a lot of the young designers and art directors in the business, especially the labels where I was at, nobody wanted to do it. I got hired to work at Elektra to do urban. And next thing you know, I'm meeting Keith Sweat and KMD and Old Dirty Bastard and Busta Rhymes, and the rest is history.
It's just a thing to me that I get frustrated with. I was at a, I won't go into this too long, but I was at a, in the city because we're always at gigs, and that we were at this really great place where a lot of new artists plays, and this guy gets introduced, and he sits down to play, and people from the audience it's loud at different times, and which was another thing that I was pissed off about. But they, a couple people shouted, "What was your name again?" And he just looked in the mic and looked at them. He goes, "They already said it." And I'm going, wait, that's a really good thing. I'm so cool and I'm selling so many records and I'm so rich. I'm not going to just answer an audience request of what's my name again to introduce myself. And then he never said his name. So I didn't.
Talking AKAs or names?
No, no, it's like I don't even know. I
His
don't. I
artist
don't know
name.
who he is. He came on. He
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
introduced. So there were several people going on, and then an artist that we work with, we love, kind of hosts this thing, and she introduced him, and then some people didn't hear, and they asked for his name, but the indiness was was also an arrogance of like they already said my name. It's like, well, okay, then I don't have to look you up. Go into Spotify, or if I like a song, I'll you want me to do the extra work to try and find. I just find it. I find the dichotomism of that and the hip hop world, like it's like there's this gap of I don't want to be insulting to the indie world because I love it and I grew up in it and that's all we promote. But it's like, my God, can you learn from a movement that started from the streets and changed the globe? I mean, since it changed fashion, it changed everything, and you're still sitting there going, I was already introduced. Like, what the fuck is going on? Like, why? Like, this is why we want to do it. We're trying to get this indie coalition going. Why isn't everybody, 100,000 songs a day, all of this going on? It's not greed. Like, why, you have no leverage. Why aren't you doing that? And you have a model of success. And you're not trying to copy it, but you need to learn from it. That's why I was interested in talking to you about this, because if you look at the schism, it's just ridiculously stupid.
It's all about, for them, being an artist, and they like to keep their thing secret. They don't want to share with anybody. It's I think sometimes they get a little too precious. I hate to say that, but they want to protect, I think, their work, their music, their image, and they don't really they they don't trust anyone.
I think sometimes a lot of the smaller indie or alternative bands that we worked with or came across my desk, sometimes they were more work, harder to solve than some of the bigger artists.
Yeah. Yeah, because the bigger artists are looking for, I wouldn't say formulas, but they have ideas that look like, or that they want them to feel important, successful. Like
Global vision.
The global vision.
Global
They want to
vision.
come right out the door with something that's like, wow, this is an
Right.
already made artist. They're
Right.
already a star. And I think that's also the difference. Yeah, for sure.
But also in the music business, some of the best music never breaks, like some of the big artists, which is unfortunate, right? Like I can't
That
tell
is
you how many
true.
artists we worked with that were super, super talented and they never, sometimes the albums get shelved or it never came out. And you're like, how is this possible? And then you see what's on the chart selling and you're just scratching your head.
Yeah, yeah. But then again, like I thought of you with LL Cool J, who I absolutely adore, and he was more, and business wise, he was more like Elton John. I mean, you'd meet him. He doesn't know you. Like the nicest,
He's
I mean,
really not, yeah.
but whether or not, and again, I don't mean this in any disrespect, whether or not it's sincere or not, because how many people do you meet? But my God, he respected the fact that, either fans, or he respected the fact is I need, I'm building this and I'll take as many friends as I could have. Whereas other people, you wouldn't. I've worked with them, who purposely would just fuck things up. But just like when if you ever met Elton John, they are just ambassadors in a sense, which makes you love them even more. So
What was cool was I had worked at 3 major record companies doing a lot of hip hop and rap. And then finally, the last label I worked for was Island Def Jam. And then having the opportunity to work with LL Cool J, who basically defined Def Jam.
Yeah.
And, he's he's super legend.
Yeah.
And he was really, really nice, but his determination and his focus and his regime to be LL Cool J is mind-blowing, and he still looks young and he's super fit, but he he knows exactly what he's doing. I remember he kissed my cheek one day and I was like, I'm never gonna wash my face again.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Going back a little bit, I mean, I think some of this is the difference of like in hip hop, it is you're under leveraged. In the beginning, you had to do it by yourself because, labels weren't signing rap artists, I should say. Hip hop is the culture, rap is the music. Until someone like Def Jam starts doing it out of Rick Rubin's dorm room. But I remember going over photos for Eric B. and Rakim, and this was Let the Rhythm Hit 'Em. But then they had some people, some friends that they wanted to get signed or they were recommending. And for a while there was this formula that a lot of rappers wanted, which was the gold chain, the car, the girls. And what we would say to them is everyone is putting this same image out. So how do you differentiate what your music is or what your raps are about so people know you're different?
I always tried to break the stereotypes with the urban artists, especially. And I respect the culture immensely. Obviously, I don't know everything about the culture, but it was like, how do I get them to have an album cover the same strength and power that a classic album cover looks like, and doesn't look so stereotypical with the logo and the graphics and the photography. So sometimes that meant pairing an artist with a photographer that wasn't necessarily someone that shot rap and hip hop, somebody that was a real amazing photographer that could bring something else out into the overall creation of this artwork.
Right.
But again, it's a culture because like, just to go a little bit widen this a bit, and then I have two other things. Um, the Beastie Boys. So again, amazing with art, amazing with branding, amazing with working with other people, right? Amazing that way. Eminem, amazing with art, amazing with image, amazing with working with other people, bringing everybody else on stage. So again, I know where it started, but anybody who became part of that movement, absorbed that culture, or felt part of that culture, adopted the same practices. It's just, to me, I've just watched this over the years and it's stunning to me. It's like any business. It's like these guys are being successful and we're a sneaker brand and we're just going to keep doing this and no one know. It's just, there's a culture that teaches. There's a culture that you could be learned from, and I'm just trying to figure out a way in real time to create this kind of coalition. I'm already working on it, but just to be able to go, these are the masters. This culture, this won, and it was the least likely to win. And no one's going, wait, there's a master class for me to be able to, like, what do and there's all these other indie associations, all this stuff, and it's like there are thousands of indie, it's like, what are we doing here? It's a $9 billion sector that's all mom and pops that could be picked off like this, right? With that many artists. And so it's a passion point of ours with our company that we're trying to solve. And I wanted to bring it up to you because of that, because in the indie side, there was a culture, there was a beggars, right? Which was a culture, which was 4AD and then XL. There was that in the UK. And you, Kim, you witnessed a lot of this because one of the bigger ones to me was Slash.
Right, which, as we all know or don't know, sort of invented itself. There was no master plan for that to happen. That happened completely organically.
Am I wrong, or did it start as a magazine?
It was a fanzine. It was a magazine that was visually incredibly interesting. It was a way for people to find out about that kind of music at the time, but it never made any money, of course.
No, it looked like a
Um,
crappier version of the Village Voice.
yeah, basically. Yeah, although they did have really great covers, because they had
They
people like
Amazing
Gary
logo.
Cantor and people like
Yeah.
that, who were hanging out in that scene doing artwork and things.
Yes,
I
yes,
mean,
and the best logo of India. I don't know who ever did. You
Yeah.
know who did that logo? How it came?
I don't know who actually physically drew it. I just remember Bob telling me he wanted it to be really drippy. That was his
But was
argument.
You
that
did
logo?
that logo, Kim?
No, I didn't.
Oh, yeah.
He was telling me the story
Right.
about,
Yeah.
because he didn't talk about a lot of this stuff all the time, just from time to time.
Well, it
he'd bring
also
it up.
kind of crosses into tagging and rock and roll too, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
stencil.
Yeah.
It's great for stenciling. So, but I think he had something like that, or that logo on that. So, do you remember the story of like when it went from magazine to label?
No, because I had to get all that information from him and the people that worked for him at the time, and by reading about it, because I didn't even live in Los Angeles at that time. So I missed that whole. I mean, Bob was a lot older than me, so he had a whole other life before I came along, and
All about Slash too is Bob signed X.
Yes.
This, famous LA punk band, and then
One of
years
my
later, I'm
favorites.
sitting in his apartment in Union Square designing an X package for Elektra. Like,
Wow.
what a small world. Yeah.
Again, and Violent Femmes, which blew me away because I was watching a Yankee game and the organist was playing a Violent Femmes song, and I just
That's crazy.
I rewound it more than once, going, wait, how would he even know what? Like, wait, this is just nuts to have that. But again, that was, you know, which we don't really necessarily. The UK has it more now. That just became a culture slash with
It
like
did.
really eclectic bands, but all in their own right, all pushing the envelope with it. There was like genres within genres.
Yeah.
Like Slash was not a one trick pony.
What about the Germs, which I believe is how the whole thing started, with the
It
Germs?
started with the Germs, huh?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. It just went from one. I mean, what ended up happening was Bob basically bought the magazine and decided he'd turn it into. I think they decided to send out a copy with a vinyl in it or something as a promotional thing, and it was relatively successful for them. Who knows what that means? I don't know what the numbers are. I just think he got an idea that he'd push it into an actual label. He knew nothing about music, nothing. Yeah.
Had vision. He was like the perfect music executive because, yes, he was my brother-in-law, but he just had the vision, and he would let artists be artists,
He
from the
was an
music to
artist in
the
what way?
artwork.
Was he a musician or is he a painter? What was he? I know he painted.
Kim
Painter.
can tell you more, but he used to make furniture, and
He was a
he's
Renaissance
an incredible
man.
painter. Yeah.
No, I think
And
what
just
happened was he got a degree in fine art. I think he had a light bulb moment where he realized that this kind of music had a huge potential to be marketed in a way that it had never been marketed before, and that people would actually buy it and listen to it. So in a way, that kind of started the whole indie scene.
yeah, it wasn't so underground anymore. It was
Yeah.
becoming
Well, it became as they went
Yeah.
along. I mean, he stuck with it for years.
Well, like everything, it took years because it's a movement.
Yeah.
But again, anything
It's a
organic
movement.
would do that. But I had a
Right.
band with them, and then consequently, if Rebecca remembers this, I mean, they were distributed. They had to deal with London Records, so
Right.
we met him at different points
Yeah.
because either when we were at London, that way too. Which I should have mentioned that we had Slash. I didn't do that, but we had Slash for, but it was overseas.
I knew
So it
that.
wasn't in the U.S. And then before he went on to full with Warner Brothers, he had all of those, and the Del Fuegos were on Slash
Yep.
before the whole Warner Brothers deal came with Los Lobos, and there was that upstreaming thing.
I think it was the beginning of it, because I remember when I was first started working at Warner's, Del Fuegos were like, everybody was talking about that band at the label.
Yeah, I know. Well, in the indie world, Bob Biggs is a legend in the States, just like, Martin Mills was with that in the UK and stuff. So it's just the fact that you were a part of that even later on was that's again a scene. The bands didn't work together, but Slash had a community.
Well, for the small label that it was, the roster was
It
amazing.
was amazing.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
you went to Slash to see what was going on
If you were the
rather than hip
shit, you
hop.
were signed to Slash.
Right.
Yeah.
So the way
Yeah.
it worked with the hip hop analogy was that Slash became the community. The label, like Beggars, became a community, but the bands still didn't intermingle or do anything with each other. It still wasn't
No,
that. The label itself created its own community.
Bob didn't operate that label like a normal label.
He
I
didn't do
mean, he
anything
did.
normal.
No, nothing normal. Nothing at all was normal. He had a really small little team of people that he worked with. They were like a family. They were punk in their attitude. They didn't give a shit about the other labels. They didn't care what anybody was doing. They did whatever they felt was needed at the moment. And I think that's one of the reasons they actually made it.
Well, and also create a community, because here's the point. Doing that doesn't guarantee success, but the only way to really be successful is to do it. And people get afraid and don't do it. So that's why there's just very few examples like that. But if you think about it, the ones that actually have the biggest impact were like, I don't give a shit. This is what we see. And then it attracts people who root for that or go, I agree with you. And then everybody else who's like, I know I really want to go, I want to follow the footsteps of everybody else and try and make it. And I've done both, right? Because either out of desperation or what the artist wanted. And it was always when you said fuck it that certain things happen differently. It was always when you went, I don't care that this is what was done before. This is what feels right now. That again, it doesn't guarantee it, but if you look back, the biggest successes with that and the worst one was, well, this makes financial sense, or this is it just, maybe it's your heart's not in it, or you just don't really get it as much as you think, but it just doesn't move the needle. Like,
Well, I think he took his marketing chops, if that's what you want to call them, from the fine art world. And he saw, what sort of, how something could become popular in the fine art world, in the gallery world. And I think he kind of saw that there was a parallel there with music. And I mean, Bob would admit himself he wasn't the biggest music fan in the world. It's not that he was a complete freak about music. Sometimes he signed bands he didn't even necessarily like himself, but he saw a potential for them. He had a gut feeling that they would fill a spot out there and they could sell records. There was something about them that was important and people needed to hear them.
however he came to it, it's still a gift to be able to know that, that he was never a
Definitely.
studio guy, but he was definitely,
No.
he definitely saw scenes.
Yeah, he understood the culture and how he could create his own culture and how he could grow that scene into something quite big. And he was never afraid to sort of keep moving, because I think a lot of people, when a lot of people used to call him a sellout at different times, because everybody wanted to keep Slash this little tiny little punk thing, LA little private club, and Bob was like, why?
Again, there's the indie scene. It's the same thing. The Mats got it when they got signed. He got most of that shit. We went to Warner Brothers. Look, it works when you're a kid. When I was a kid, it is true that there was a time when I was a kid, and I was working with Duran Duran at the beginning. And I'm with them in the elevator, and punk kid, and I was talking to them about not selling out, and they looked at me like I was on fucking Mars. They're like, "What are you talking about? What is with this precious cool thing? We want to be fucking huge." Little kid, what? Go make a copy of something. Get a carbon paper, and what the fuck are you talking? And I'm like shocked. I'm like, no, and then, well, guess who was right and who was the idiot? I don't know. This is why I'm sitting in my little room doing it. Duran. That was, I mean, again, it's this, you said it before, this preciousness that's really never left, to do that. And again,
You were hungry like a wolf, Russ.
I should have been.
Well, they were. They were.
And the first pun comes out.
I am.
The first pun comes out. Yes.
Yes, yes, and I'm a guy on film right now, so there you go. So
There you go.
there it goes. The point being, I was just trying to figure out how cultures go, but with related to hip hop, with indie, with even the labels actually figuring out cultures. You went from, we'll go back to the art on the other sense, but you went from the music industry to brands.
Yes.
And
Yes,
so
we did.
I'd love to know, for women, is it a different world, same world, or the music industry taught you a lot to be able to deal with the brand world, and how did that world, and then how did what you learned in the industry, in our industry, connect to the brand world, and what could we learn about, a lot of questions, and what could we learn about the brand world the same way with hip hop that you could learn this, for the indie community.
Well, it's really interesting because Kim and I were both art directors running art departments on opposite ends of the country. And when I left Island Def Jam and I said to her, what should I do now? I don't really know if I want to go work at another label again. Like, where is there even a work at this point, especially after being at all the top ones? And she's like, well, we could start a company. And what I realized was that the music business, even though everybody in it is so kind of sucked into it, they eat, leave, breathe, shit it. But then when you're not in it, you don't realize how much other people don't give a fuck about it.
Yeah.
It's a
So
small world.
we,
It is a small.
as kind of known as we were, and there's a lot of people in the music business that think they're famous. I never ever thought that. I was like, I'm working with celebrities. I'm not famous, but I'm
Right.
working with celebrities, and just trying to just like move forward. And we had to reinvent ourselves because we were known for just doing album packaging, not doing branding and graphic design and brand evolution for all these other, consumer packaged goods.
But you were.
Yeah, but we had to prove it took us about 5 years to reinvent ourselves.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
but interestingly enough, now the way that you guys do these 360 deals with these bands, that didn't exist back then. There was no synergy, right? Somebody did this,
when
somebody did
RCA
that.
broke when they had all that success with Britney Spears, and then she had that multi-million-dollar thing with Pepsi, that did not go to them. Because they did not have that. That was a manager thing, that the manager in a sense had the managers were always the one that used to have the power, then it got taken away, and now it's coming back because of this. But yeah, I don't ever feel sorry for labels because of how much money they make every other way. But you're right. That was their grab, because they were getting killed on, their business model was getting destroyed by tech again before it got saved and then multiplied by tech. But I understand the fact of trying to change a brand's perception of you. I try and do it here when we go after catalogs, and you're talking, because I spend my time also, one foot's either with a band or one foot's with a banker or investors, and you're talking about, and I go, no, I'm an asset manager. And then
Yeah.
what do you mean by that? Well, if you're working a record label or catalogs, or you're trying to maximize, that working, or you're, in my world, we're getting a band, it's about the good thing, like making their legacy grow, and that the other generations follow it. But in their world, you're talking about revenue and growth to be able to do that. And you go, that's asset managing. Like, it's the same turn. You're not seeing it because you don't understand the industry. So it must have been hard for you to be walking in going, we, unlike you, we have to brand. You have a product, and then you just keep expanding the brand. We have to do a whole brand series every freaking week. Another record comes, that's a new brand. You have to invent
It's
a
a whole
brand.
new brand.
Yeah.
You invent a brand, boom, boom. Nothing is the same unless the record blows up and you're doing record two. Everything's a new brand. So actually, you're more prepared to deal with brands issues, but they just could, the imagination, it's just that the aperture is just not.
I think, though, at the end of the day, you have to understand graphic design, because you can, and you have to have this natural talent for knowing how to extract what you need to get out of any project.
What is graphic design?
Visual communication. And so when you look at something, what is it saying to you? And it doesn't matter what it is, it still has to speak to you. Picture speaks 1,000 words, right? Same thing.
So what was the first brand that gave you the, like, said, okay, let's go do this?
I guess Bliss was the first one, because I started working on Bliss when I was the creative director at Elektra Records. I did the first 5 products that came out. And basically it was also working with a lot of hip hop artists at the time. Maybe one of the albums that really inspired me for Bliss was Ultramagnetic MCs. And I was using this
Wow.
lowercase sans serif font. And I was like, hey, what if I bring this into the skincare spa world and just use color and typography mostly as the focus? And it basically, shook up the industry.
Yeah, and that business itself, the business model for that company was completely refreshing. It was like taking this dry, sort of stuck in one place spa world into a fun it girl kind of format.
What I love about that though was Bliss Spa was like the hot spa in
It was.
Soho.
It was the it girl place.
And to go and I went a couple of times and it was this incredible experience. So you were able to so expertly translate and transfer that feeling to the product. It was,
Well,
Well,
it was not much
so-
different than designing an album cover that stands the test of time. You're designing a brand DNA in just 5 products, and the brand is still alive to this day, although it's been beaten to a pulp. Don't even get me started on that.
Let me get you
But
started.
it still stood the test of time.
But that's what again, you proved the point that you were
Yeah.
built for, your experience in the music industry was actually
Helpful.
like an under leveraged asset that they didn't see, because they, again, it's like a bubble. They have no idea what that is. They had no idea
Well,
really what you did.
typography for any diehard designer is the most important thing. You can have, obviously we want a good photo as well, but if you have a shitty photo, you just crop the shit out of it and it makes it better instantly. But if you can add some
Yeah.
beautiful typography on top of that, and typography is one of the hardest things. I don't even know how to explain it. One day you just get it.
It's
But,
not appreciated really by a lot of people. They don't even
Yeah.
really understand it.
No,
Nobody
no, and
does.
artists don't
Clients don't
understand.
even
Artists don't
understand it.
understand it either.
No.
So and again, isn't there a finite number of things you could kind of pull from, or is it just you just need to keep, making soup and just trying different things, because there's only so much you have, right?
It's a sensibility, knowing what font is the right font. I always say to my students, let the typography speak to you. What is it saying to you? Especially when they're trying to pick fonts, they don't know if a font is good or not. And that's really frustrating, because there's a lot of people designing fonts these days, and I've never had the desire to design a font, because I respect typography so much and there's so many good fonts. Why do I need to design another font that, I'll
Yeah.
just use the amazing ones that are going to continue to work hard for me and always look good.
But sometimes the typography isn't necessarily a font. It's an illustration. It's done by hand. It's a photograph of words. It can be anything. You determine what is going to work the best with the vibe that you're going for a cover.
But
It can be anything.
is your methodology with a brand similar to talking to an artist then?
Well, the good thing is that the products don't talk back, but the marketing people do.
They're
Yeah.
never late for photo shoots, and they don't have any drug problems.
No.
But
They
it's
might
a
have too
different.
much hyaluronic acid in them. But
Exactly.
So excluding all the artists that I work with, I was just using the fact that you're coming to the same thing to try and make something classic on very little, unless the brand's well established or the band's well established, then it's a different challenge. But you're still taking in what it is and trying to find the essence, and then trying to like you just said, express
It's
it
almost
visually.
harder. It's almost harder than album packaging because you're designing this brand and getting the initial DNA of the brand, and that has to last the life of the brand, right? Whereas when you're working with a musical artist, you've got the life of that album. And yes, some artists
Mhm.
use the same logo for different albums, but a lot of artists evolve every album. They have a different look, a different persona, a different thing. The music's different for every album.
Right.
So, but when you're starting with a brand and say you're doing 5 products, you've got to think big picture. Like this brand is going to have another, 39 products attached to it, or every year new products are going to launch. How do
Mhm.
I design something that has legs that allows me to have branding extension?
Well, to me, that's what a logo is for a band.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah. I mean, the thing about the beauty and skincare business is it's kind of a even though it's a massive business, it's kind of a niche business in terms of working on it, designing it. There's people that just do that. They're specialists, really. That's all they do. There's a
But they're
certain
all looking at other brands and comparing themselves to other brands and
exactly.
using reference like it's no different, and it's the same thing. You're getting these decks from marketing people, and they've got all the usual suspects in there, and the brands that I can't tell you how many beauty decks we've gotten that have NARS in it. It's like, yeah, NARS is great. NARS was one of the first great makeup brands that came out, and people are still ripping it off, and it's like, come on, guys, like you can think of something other than just what looks like NARS.
Well, that's like find me another Taylor Swift.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's similar. It's similar. Is there a culture within when you work with brands? Do you find is there any similarity with a culture of that? Do they are they is do they see the musicality that you bring or are interested in that at all, or it's just apples and oranges?
I think it's a silent thing for us. I think people notice that our approach is different. And I think that our approach is different because we didn't come from the classic school of cosmetic beauty packaging that a lot of these big brands kind of embed into their employees. We folk, we approached it with like no different than we would design an album package. What's going to stand out, look amazing, and make a statement on shelf, right? Just the same way that an album cover would.
It's sometimes hard to convince the client that what you're doing will stand out or make a difference. They're often, oh, yeah, I mean,
They'll
they
test
test
our comps on,
everything.
Yeah, but they're
and
testing
before
early. But they're testing early stages. You're not even
before we
finished
do
yet.
that, they'll say, "What's your favorite one?" And we'll tell them. And it's always a gut instinct, right? And then they'll test them, and then the results will come back, and it's the one we pick.
You're that good.
It's just
Always.
it's knowing. It's
No,
knowing.
no, no.
Yeah.
They're always comparing themselves to
Yeah.
everybody else. That's the difference, I think, in the
Right. It's
music.
almost like they're looking over their shoulder to
So
see what the
you're saying that I have a lot in common with brands.
It's actually it's a lot calmer than the music business. It's not as chaotic. It's more corporate. It's more
Yeah,
corporate.
well,
It's more
definitely, right.
organized. The deadlines are longer. There's more lead time because it takes so long to develop these products. So, and you're working with the bigger companies, you're working with in-house teams. They're specialists, it's the people that actually work with the labs to create the formulas for the products that know exactly what makes them better than the others. You're working with those people. They're
Mhm.
trying to explain to you what's different about this product.
Right.
Right.
You have to work with all those people. You're working with the CEO, you're working with the product development team, you're working with marketing, you're working with, a number of teams of people that are specialists, and you have to sort of take that all in.
But
And
also, if you're launching a new face cream and the packaging can look amazing and everything, and but if the cream sucks, it's no one's going to keep coming back to buy it.
Every
But if
time you talk
it's
about me, this stuff rhymes. If the songs suck, it doesn't matter what the packaging looks like. You are talking to the marketing team and the promotion team about that. So if I won the lottery and I said we're doing this and I said we're gonna do, you guys have carte blanche running an art department back in the music thing. What have you learned working in because you've had different lives, right? Just like me, we've done I've been what, 6 different business sectors. What would you do differently now that you wouldn't have done before, having this experience with with this whole other genre that is incredibly image oriented, it incredibly needs to be able to communicate, and very brand specific, just like bands need to be. What did you learn now that you know now that you would bring?
I would completely ignore everyone. 100%.
Join us next week for part 2 with Kim and Alli.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Music Network podcast. If you found this episode helpful, share it with an artist, fan, or industry friend. And if you want more practical, no bullshit strategies to build your music career, hit subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. Follow us on socials at Not Dead Yet Media, and contact us and submit questions or music at our website, notdeadyetmedia.com/contact. The music you're hearing today is artist Tosh Wolf's song Electric Blue. Until next time, keep making music that matters. And remember, in the words of Frank Turner, we can get better because we're not dead yet.